Welcome to Running in the 70s, where we interview, meet, and get to know athletes of all kind who were running in the 70s. I'm your host, Matthew Kleinowski.
Today on the podcast, we're back in Florida in Bradenton with a person who has been all over the country and all over the world, from the Midwest of the U.S. through Pennsylvania and now in Florida, with an amazing career. Everything from starting running when there wasn't even a women's team to competing at the highest levels and achieving national record, achieving at the highest levels both as a coach and as an athlete, the Olympics, World Championships, everything. Welcome today, the amazing Teri Jordan. Hi, Teri.
I don't think I'm amazing, but I've been very blessed by God to have allowed me to be a little farm girl from Leonardville, Kansas, to have traveled the world. Yes.
Well, let's talk about Kansas. What was it like growing up there in terms of being an athlete and a female?
When we started, I ran on the boys' team in high school, then was fortunate enough to qualify for nationals in the Junior Olympics. Then my senior year, they actually started a women's track team. So, but until then, I ran on the boys' track team, but they would not allow me to run in the state finals with the guys. I was the third runner, and we ended up second in state. Well, I had an amazing coach, Mr. Newsom, and him allowing me to do that was just a really honor.
What year was that, and what were the facilities like for your track?
I guess I started with cross country, so we ran on a golf course. The track at high school, when they actually allowed me to run with the team, was a center track, and I was just so happy to be able to run that I didn't care what I ran on. It was just an amazing experience to allow me to run. A lot of times we would go to high school meets, and I had to drive myself to the high school meet, and I would run with the boys. And a lot of times they would drop out because they said, "Oh, she's a professional." And I'm going, wow, I'm certainly not a professional. Well, I did okay against the guys, but a lot of them didn't want, unfortunately, be beaten by me.
You mentioned you had a wonderful coach. What kind of training were you doing? What did you know about training? What was the contribution of your coach to your improvement over that time?
Okay, he was just a very positive person. If you are allowed to run with better performers, and whether you can beat them or not, you start to improve. The nice thing, I couldn't even ride on the bus home in that. I ended up having to run 5 miles home after and 5 miles back. So I think maybe that added distance also helped my strength.
What was the progression of Junior Olympics then? Was there a local meet and successive qualifiers? How did that work then?
The first year I went to it, I guess I must have been a junior, and I finished fourth nationally. The following year, that's when they started the women's track team at Riley County High School. Then I was training 3 times a day. I would train at 5 in the morning, and then I took a student study hall, and
Right.
I would do stairs up and down the stairs. Then I would run after school. Unfortunately, I got a stress fracture right after I won the Kansas 800 meters. The year before, I ran 2:13. I think it was 2:13.3, and finished fourth nationally. Even though I went out at 60, I went out too fast. The next year, I started out at 2:14.2, so I'm like, oh, it's going to be a great year. Then I stress fractured at the first meet. The next day, I was supposed to give an inspirational speech about how great it was for women to have an opportunity. And I had to go to the state meet talking about, yes, this is so great. And here I am on crutches. No, Yeah, I didn't say that part, but the reality is we live and learn. Sometimes training more isn't better. It's training smarter.
Yeah, I did Junior Olympics in Johnstown. I won a couple races, and I just didn't have the wherewithal or the funds to get to the next level. So I just would run the local meet, win them all, and then go. Do you remember how many levels there were to get to nationals in the Junior Olympics then in the early 70s?
I believe it was district, regionals, and then nationals.
Okay. What kind of student were you, and what was your outlook on going to college?
I was a very good student as far as and a 3.8, very few Bs, but my SATs weren't as well. And I attribute that a lot to a small town farming background, and I didn't have the vocabulary a lot of people have. Some people said go to Division 3 school, and I chose to go to Division 1, and I was going to prove them wrong that I was smart enough, I would work hard enough, or I would outwork everybody and never skip a class, never do any of that. And I won't say I was that smart, but I was very determined.
Do you think your competitive attitude in athletics was part of that in academic achievement?
Yeah, I don't think I would have graduated magna cum laude without thinking that if you just work hard enough at it, you can do it.
Did you have any role models before you went to college and running? As being on the boys' team until your senior year, did you have any role models who were female or male in track and running?
I've read a lot of books. Jim Ryan's story was inspirational to me. Doris Brown Heritage. I can't believe that she's now one of my best friends because at the time I just admired her so much. And she was a great inspiration as a person. And she was my first coach at the World Student Games in Moscow in 1973 after I won the collegiate nationals. To this day, amazing, wonderful friendships from really some wonderful, inspirational people.
Yeah, a few other people have talked about that. They've seen their idols, and a few years later, they're on the starting line of a major marathon with them and saying, "What is happening here?" How did you pay for college? You went locally in Kansas to Kansas State. How did you fund that? Was there scholarship or assistance?
Now, I didn't have any, I took out loans. Eventually, I got an academic scholarship for $25, but never figured anybody would give me anything. They started giving scholarships after I left K State, and so happy that women got the opportunity after that. Two national titles for them. And I just thank you, Lord, for the opportunity to compete for K State.
You were a pioneer there. I think some of your accomplishments were the first for female or perhaps any athlete at K State to do what you did at the national championships. What were your expectations after your first major successes for the rest of your career? How did that affect you and what you expected out of yourself? Because it didn't take long for you to get to with the world stage.
After I went to my first Olympic trials, and I was fortunate to have the fastest mile time in the nation going into the trials, Francie LaRue had, I ran 4:41.6 and she ran 4:41.7. But I just missed the Olympic team in that in 1972. So after the 1972 Olympic trials, and I only finished sixth, even though Francie and I were in the top 3 going into the final curve, but taken down at 213, and I was used to go down at 218, which would have been a more even race. Anaerobically, it's like going to the bank. If you take it out too soon, you might not have enough to finish. And I finished sixth, but not in the top 3 as I hoped. But I think Augie Alderbright saw a little farm girl wearing shorts that was by herself, a t-shirt, and said, please come out to San Jose State and go to school here and train with us. I was training with him and Francie LaRue and Sidney Poore and Judy Graham and some of the best. We had 150 girls on the team. There's only 8 of us that made the Olympic team or not. So that experience at Santa Clara, where Sidney Poore and Judy Graham and I lived together, was an outstanding experience, whether it led me to very much know all the best athletes and train with them or to compete against them. I became a lot more confident than the little farm girl from Leonardville, Kansas that started in 1972. By 76, I was very confident in myself, didn't execute. I, I think the 1500 had just gotten so fast for me that I missed it by one place making the finals, but I was second in the 3000. And that's when I got to go to Montreal and then on compete in the US Russian duel after that.
Let me ask you about those trials in 72.
They were college.
Yeah, you were a national record holder at one point, national champion. How did you deal with it? What was it like? How did you deal with results that were less than you expected it? For example, in a meet like that.
Actually, it was my freshman year at Kansas State. So for me to even make the Olympic trials, for me to even be there was like incredible. I had Marion Washington, who was a great basketball player that was throwing the discus, and Janet Reeser, who was a great corner hurdler and basketball player. We went together to the trials. Again, finishing sixth was an honor for me. And I was surprised at that, even though in my head, when I went there, I thought I was going to be in the top 3 for sure. Sometimes what we expect and what we do, and I think that's where Augie Algebright saw me as a person that looked like I was fish out of water. And I probably was, because I was my first year being really on the national scene. You just do the best you can.
It wasn't uncommon for people to be training twice a day and for people running the extreme longer distances, 10K marathon, to train twice a day. The 3 times a day training that led to your stress fracture, how did you back off to that? And what became the norm through the next time through university, how much you were training?
Twice a day at Kansas. DeLon Stantz was my coach, and Lon Lloyd, the assistant coach. And I was running only twice a day, but I was running 8 miles in the morning and 14 at night, and then intervals on the off days. It was a high mileage time, but probably having run all those miles from the golf course or high school to home and that extra 10 miles, I was probably stronger than most to handle a higher mileage. In some ways, I think about the Kenyans, and even though they run a lot from or they did at least from their high school to back, even though they have higher altitudes than that, it could have been somewhat that they were also stronger because of how they had to get back and forth from school.
Let me ask you about Francie LaRue. The names that you called out will be familiar to people who are involved in running intimately and following it, but almost anyone following the sport would know the name Francie LaRue because of her success. What was your relationship with her, and how was it having a competitor at that level and a training partner at that level?
I could beat her in practice. I'd never beat her in a meet. And she's a very strategic and very good athlete. Sometimes you learn that people are just fantastic in strategies. They know your strengths and they know your weaknesses. She had a high anaerobic threshold where I was more an even paced runner. So when she went out fast in that 72 games, that I think that was the difference, that in 76 when I went and I was against Jan Merrill in the 3000, I let them go then just came back on them. Instead of trying to run their race, I ran my own. So I think that's how I got second in 3 and 76.
You had great academic success, magna cum laude, K-State. What did you major on, and what was your outlook for what you would do after university, and what was the outlook for a running career?
I student taught at junior high. I thought that physical education was and coaching was where I wanted to be, but not all those at Manhattan High School. We had a great time in the dance part, but in the track and field part, I just realized that I need to be with highly motivated people and not so much people that don't enjoy the sport as much. The collegiate level, I think, was good. Or I always enjoyed when I was out at San Jose, I had volunteered for the Paralympic and the Special Olympics. And I realized I just need to be with highly motivated people that really want to be there, because I work well with people that want the opportunity. I think that's why even being with women, it was just an opportunity, because a lot of them didn't have opportunities until we gave it to them.
Right. I didn't mention yet that you're an author. You wrote a book about running, about racing, about training. What was your plan for coaching once you got out of university, and where did that take you?
I ended up being able to get a grad assistantship at Kansas. I could have had one at Cal Berkeley or and UCLA. I got after I accepted the one at Kansas University. But I just wanted the opportunity to help other women to have the opportunity I had. I thought it'd be awesome to have a woman to be able to do that. It's just people helping people.
Let's run through some of the places that you went to and some of the teams and individuals that you coached and your approach to coaching individuals that are very different. I know one of the individuals you coached at Texas was a friend of mine who's no longer with us, Tammy Asian, a small town girl from Western Pennsylvania. No doubt you had all kinds of different personalities. How did you approach the different types of personalities among athletes as coaches?
I think we just need to respect one another as people. Tammy was easy to coach. She became a great 400 hurdler and national champion. Each person was very unique and special. Denise Armstrong threw me her keys one time, and she was a high jumper. And I said, "Wow, you've got a great arm. Have you ever thought of the heptathlon?" In life, you just see everybody's assets, and then you try to expound upon that.
You coached at several different universities. How did you get the skills, confidence, experience, and success apart from the events that you were involved in? You coached the track teams, not just the runners and events that you had personally experienced.
I became blessed, and I always said, you learn from those around you, whether it was learning the discus at Kansas University from Coach Timmons, and they're high school coaches. So Robin Small was one of my athletes there. And I would never have thought of myself as a throwing coach, but it was fun to learn new things. And just as I've learned in college to analyze the high jump, I became a student of the sport and just was very blessed to see how angles and being in biomechanics was my second degree at Kansas University. Learning about that helped me to help others. That was always my intent, was be the best coach I could be.
You're a competitive athlete. How were you as a coach? Did your view on your personal competitiveness inform how you coached? What was the level of that compared to your athletes?
I don't know. I always tried to be kind, and I ran for God as an athlete, and I try to be the same as a coach. So be kind and be loving and see people as they are, then try to make them the very best that they can be. Again, we're all the same people. We might have a different view, or it may have come from a different place. If I cut my wrist and you cut your wrist, I bet we all bleed red. If we could see our sameness instead of our differences, that's how I think that whether you're coaching a black athlete, a white athlete, a purple athlete, it doesn't matter. It's just, do you see the kind heart in that? Julie Cuthbert was another really great athlete and a sprinter. And I really was not sure of coaching sprints, but when she had a brain tumor at Texas, being able to see the humanness of that and try to help her to recover. And she did and became one of the best athletes in the world. But it's not about necessarily being the best. Some of my best athletes are just the best people I've ever met in my whole life. And they've always inspired me. And whether it was Maggie Redden, who's in a wheelchair at Penn State, or Courtney Clemens, who was a wounded veteran, each person is very special and they just bring such a wonderful experience to your life. Uh, when Maggie came back and I told her, oh, my son and I just went to Florida and we were able to go to Disneyland and Universal. And she told me she went and painted the church in Mexico. From that point on, my son and I went to the Dominican Republic and helped with an orphanage there. Sometimes you learn more from your athletes than from yourself.
Nice. I want to talk about any obstacles that you observe. Perhaps you discounted them, perhaps you just said that's part of it. But as a female in the sport, we'll talk about coming to Pennsylvania and your long career and a couple different roles at Penn State. You moved through the various colleges. How did you get new opportunities and what was your decision points?
I think a lot of times it was, how can I give more opportunity to other people? I was blessed that the athletic directors saw the success in one field. And again, whether we won a national championship in Texas or was fourth at Kansas University or coming to Penn State was one of the places. Originally, when I got there, I was thinking, I'll be here 4 years and then I'm going to back south because I don't like the cold. But after 34 years, Penn State was a good fit for me as far as being able to be a mother and a coach. And I was just so gifted by the athletic directors that I had, whether it was Tim Curley or Mark Bodenschott or all. And then they gave an opportunity to start this ability program where we call it ability athletes because we wanted to focus on what you have instead of what you don't have. It was a wonderful experience. It's just trying to give opportunities to people that wouldn't have an opportunity if the university didn't allow us to have that.
You're one of the most appreciative people. You know yourself and positive attitude. I just want to ask, since we talked about the idea of you having role models that you then became friends with, did you talk about your own accomplishments or past personal experiences through training with your athletes? Was that part of your coaching? Were they aware of it, what you had accomplished?
Some of them knew because you can't live in this world without one knowing the other or what past has been. But I'm more grateful to God for the opportunities He just allowed me to meet the right people at the right time. Sometimes I was totally amazed to even have that happen to me. And I'm going, could a little girl from Leonardville, Kansas ever get around the world and see as many places and coach as many U.S. teams and be able to meet even Jeff Pants, who was a Paralympic? How did I actually meet him after we did a clinic? And he ended up being our first Paralympic athlete that finished eighth in Athens. How did I even meet him as he was taking his trumpet and in his wheelchair across? I just go, thank you, Lord, for the opportunity to work with these amazing people. And thank you for sending them to me. I don't think it's me. It never was me.
25 years ago, at the end of the 1990s, you made the switch from athletics coach at Penn State to the specialty program for ability athletes. What was going on then to pioneer and start this program officially? And what did you think it could become? What was the vision then?
I had two opportunities. One was to go to Auburn and be one of the first men and women's track coaches, or was it to start this program at Penn State? I thought there would be less stress on my son, who was very young at the time, if I didn't fight a problem with a divorce I'd already accepted. And again, all things work to good for those who love the Lord. It was probably the most wonderful experience I've ever had. But at the time, I was going, oh, it would be so much fun to coach men and women's team at Auburn. And I love the Auburn area and all that. But we make our choices and see what the next step is. And in life, I think that's how it goes. You can either be excited about the opportunity to present each day and be the best you can be to help as many people as you can, or you can be sad that you lost something. And I've never lost anything. I've only gained a lot of friends and a lot of opportunity to help people become the best they can be. And that's all that's important. How other people become the best they can be.
That's very nice to hear. What was the world like for ability athletes then as you were starting that program? How new was it in the bigger scope of the country? And the world has changed quite a bit in the last 25 years. What was it like then?
The University of Illinois had the best wheelchair program probably in the country. And you found their niches. I would always encourage people, and I'd even encourage our athletes after he was going on to grad school to go to the University of Illinois because he was a wheelchair. His name was Brett Gravitt, and he had a soccer injury. I didn't ever want to hold somebody back because maybe they had other people that they could train with. He trained at Chula Vista at the Olympic Training Center for a year. Then I think he found out that he wanted to go to grad school at the University of Illinois after. People in the best place. We had a lot of throwers, and then we had a lot of people that wanted to do other things. Now, back to the U.S. team in Paralympics as far as 100, 200, 400, and she placed very well in Beijing. But sometimes you have to find what does that make the person happiest? What is it that they can get the academics? It's always about, can you get the academic degree? That should be most important, academic and then athletics. And always wanted to make it best for the athlete. I think we had 8 make the world and Paralympic team in Paralympics, as well as many able-bodied Olympians. In the world, how are these people helping other people? I'm looking on Facebook, and my athletes and their kids are going to the Olympic trials in marathon and that in the next coming months. And I'm going, wow, they're continuing to encourage their children to become their best. I have a lot of athletes, Robin Johnson, who's the coaches that are now athletes. Carly Christ at Naval Academy, she's gone on to be an administrator. But you look at people, how are they continue to help other people? It's just wonderful to see women being so successful now in this world.
Quite a nice legacy to have, to be able to see generational continuation of people, of lives you've impacted. I think it's the case of everyone who was running through the 70s, knows the name, and has an impression and wishes that Steve Prefontaine had not died so young. You had personal connection to him in the early days of Nike, and there's some waffle trainers right behind me on the screen there. What was your story with the early days of Nike and Steve?
I was very lucky to have met him early. He gave me and had me test the Waffles trainers, and I'd have to give him feedback on that. I was dating Tony Waldrick, who was a miler, and they were always great in the mile, especially indoors. But I guess that's how I got connected with them. It was fun to give feedback to them. I had one of the first shoes. I wish I hadn't given it away. It probably would be worth quite a bit now. But it was how it was being worn down and how you experience the tread and how that could be improved. And then you give input on that. It was a lot of fun. I remember the last time I saw Pre, he was at California Games, and he said, I'll see you next week. And I really thought I would see him next week. I was working at Hewlett Packard while going to school. I was listening to the news, and when I heard that he had died, it was probably one of the most devastating news instances that I could have gotten on the radio. I just could not believe that he would not be with us. He was one of the greatest distance runners that the U.S. ever had.
Yeah, that's an amazing time and connection that you have there. Were you in connection with Nike as an athlete yourself?
I was fortunate to be sponsored by them after, I believe, the 72 trials. As athletes, we continued to have good conversation. And as a coach, they had called me, and I called Joe Couture and said, I believe that if you accept for football, they're going to allow the whole university to get sponsored. And Joe was a good friend of mine. And so he ended up accepting the proposal, and we got uniforms and everything else for not just the football team, but for the whole Penn State. And that was another thing I was very grateful for, to have that opportunity to help in a small way.
It may not be as small to a lot of people as you view it. And I think that's an amazing story that demonstrates some of the high impacts you've had on a lot of people. And probably some people don't even know that how things happen. That's a great story. Thanks for telling that.
It was, again, an honor to meet all these people. And if I had a small impact, I'm very honored to have done it.
Yeah, Joe Paterno, when I first started, I'll cut this out, but I ran, 1974 was probably my first high school track season. And we had the state championships at Beaver Stadium. That was the last year that they were there. Maybe I might have ran in 73 too. And Joe Paterno would be down the track. He'd come and hand the medals out, but he'd only hand them out to the sprinters. And I don't think he bothered coming to all the medal ceremonies, but he was around the stadium when we had the state championships there. And then they moved on to Shippensburg. But a lot of people got a chance to track athletes. I think there's a lot of people that probably got a chance to meet him and see Penn State and Beaver Stadium, even if they weren't going to be involved later. That was fun. Yeah. At some point in 1974, it wasn't a great track. There was a ledge on the inside. It was one, I'm sure it's been resurfaced a few times since then. And I haven't been back, I think, since the mid 70s.
Yeah, they moved a separate track out away from the stadium. So it's not even part of the stadium anymore.
The people I know, I saw Dave Felice, Alan Sharshu, some of these late 70s runners that were in my era while I was still running that eventually went there. I'm trying to catch up with a few more. Mike Shine. I know some of these guys that were Pennsylvania athletes are the ones that I know that ended up going. Mike Shine. It's like Tammy Asian. These are people that cross paths. Did you run against Joan Hansen?
I ran against Wendy Koenig, and she's now one of my really good friends. So whether it's Madeline Manning or Wendy Koenig, Wendy was from Colorado. So she's still there. And has just told me she's retired from being the park mayor. So she will probably
Wow.
be coming down to be soon.
Nice.
And yeah, we were great friends because not too many were at our level at Kansas and Colorado.
You can never beat her.
Never beat her in 800. And she still beat me in the 1500. But regardless, we always had a lot of laughs and we always had a lot of fun. And it doesn't really matter if you win or lose. If it was very competitive, you really enjoyed that person and you appreciated their work and effort too.
And now you're in Bradenton. You're done with the coaching in the university, but you found an outlet to be competitive. Everything from riding and pickleball is a new competitive outlet, right?
Yes, and it's been fun to help a blind athlete from church to be able to go to the Paralympic trials and throw shot and disc and javelins. Sometimes God again puts people across our borders that, and if you can help them to get an opportunity that they wouldn't have, it's just now I'm getting to pay for them instead of at a university, but it's about an opportunity. If you can help somebody have an opportunity and give them experience they never had and make their life better, that's what's really fantastic. And I'm so amazed to have that opportunity. And I even had one with pickleball. We played at the U.S. Open with my wheelchair athlete, and it's amazing that was able to place there. Yes, I do enjoy pickleball for fun.
Do you have a trophy room? Do you look back at your career? You're a person who thinks about other people, thinks how you can continue to contribute your entire life. Very gracious, very grateful. What about your reflections on that? Do you have chances to talk with some of the people that you competed against and think about the old days? Does that ever happen?
I help and talk to a lot of people, but we don't necessarily talk about the old days. We talk about the present and how if I can inspire them to get a new opportunity, that's makes me happy. And if I can help them in whatever way, that's more important to me than anything else I'm doing. And I do have a lot of my athletes follow me.
I'm sure a lot of those relationships, yeah, are strong and bring joy to everybody involved. And I think people hearing this will be hopefully encouraged themselves to live in the presence and look for more opportunities to have a impactful life. It's great to talk to you and get to know you a little bit.
Matthew, thank you so much. And thank you for your time. And a lot of people have helped to inspire us, and may we continue to help a few other people.
It's great. If your friends who would enjoy doing an interview like this, I very much welcome you to invite them to get in touch with me.
Oh, thank you very much. I'll mention it to a few.
I didn't design it to be about elite athletes, especially. At the beginning, there were only a handful of women runners at IUP then. It was a club sport, but I was able to interview a couple of them and saying, realize what a pioneer you were. It wasn't even it was a club when you first started and it turned into a proper sport. So I had a harder time getting women to talk about themselves. I think when people hear your interview, it might encourage other women that it's safe to come on here and tell their stories too, because it's really good to have.
Yes, I heard you interviewed Mary Decker Slaney, who is a good friend of mine.
I never got a hold of Mary yet. I'd be great if you could send her this and ask her.
I don't have her phone number.
I'd love to talk to her because that's certainly a name that people would love, an insight of what it's like to be 14 years old and facing all the ceilings and world and not even being allowed to compete just because she was too young, and having an age barrier, let alone any possible gender challenges. Yeah.
I didn't compete against her till she was 14 and I was 19 and she set the world record in the 800 meters in that indoor meet that I was in. but very nice person and grew up very fast, very young. All right. Thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you. Thank you for all your
Bye.
time. Bye-bye.
Bye.
I hope you enjoyed another episode of Running in the 70s. Voices, stories, and memories of athletes who were running in the 70s. Until next time, wherever you are, keep looking forward and don't forget to look back.